we're never going to change the industry as a whole. But to say industry we have to change, or we've all got to do a better job. Okay, yeah, we've all got to do a better job, but we will all do a better job individually. And that will drive exponential change.
So Jeremy, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate your time. Here at Gather, we really wanted to pick your brains. Obviously, with your background in architecture and design, it's a really interesting one because you see a lot of the developments way before the golfer, way before the majority of the industry. So in terms of where you see the industry in this COVID time period, where do you see it in the sort of short, medium term? What's the sort of indicators out there in the industry?
I would have said the last 10 years have been something of an idiot filter. You know, in the mid 2000s, everybody was calling up and saying that they were thinking maybe one day about possibly doing a golf course, but you know, until they'd got planning, they needed you to work for nothing. But you know, if it works out, we'll talk then about a deal. Well, so 2008 knocked 95% of them out of the market. The last 6 months, I think, has knocked the other 5% out. Right. You know, the opportunistic guys have gone. The people that are left and the people that are serious, our experience is they're moving ahead. You know, they've said on existing projects, they've said, look, we're not going to be that busy for the next 18 months. The hotel is certainly not going to be, you know, anywhere near capacity. So let's use this opportunity to do what we were thinking of doing over a 3, 4, 5 year period. Let's just get it done. Money is cheap from the bank. Labor is relatively available. We've got a nice 5 year window to get things done. So we've had a couple of projects slow down or stop, but we've had 3 or 4 more that we thought were going to be longer term, and they've all come in. So you know, I think from the perspective of design and construction, I see quite positive things coming out of the last 7 months.
From an industry perspective, is there anything that just is one of those pain points for you that is just a frustration that really grinds your gears, as it were, but is something you just can't change?
There are lots of frustrations. I'm just not sure that I would accept that there's nothing that we can't change. You know, I just fundamentally believe that in the end, common sense prevails. And yes, there are frustrations. The whole governance of golf has to change, I think. People have to understand, regardless of the environment that you're in, golf is a business. And every golf club has customers, whether those customers are members or green fees or resort guests or whatever it might be, but they are customers. And if you don't give them what they want, they'll go somewhere else. But the number of times you talk to, particularly in member-based facilities, and the number of times you'll hear people saying how glad they are that they're not working in a commercial environment, and you just think, well, what do you think this is? You know, who do you think those people sat over there are? They are your customers. So, you know, of course you're in a commercial. You may not be running for profit, but you are in a commercial operation.
What does the word golf sustainability mean to you?
Well, it means more. So I wouldn't put golf. I wouldn't classify it as golf sustainability. It's sustainability, and so you've got 3 and/or arguably 4 pillars of that. You know, you've got the economic argument, you've got the ecological argument, you've got a social argument, and then Jonathan Smith at Golf Environment Organization would be very insistent that the 4th pillar is cultural. So, you know, you can't separate the environment. You can't separate any one of those 3 or 4 pillars, because otherwise the other 3 will fall down. You know, they are all related, and you know, if you draw a simple bubble diagram where those 4 bubbles intersect, that's the point of sustainability. Now, golf has got probably the best resource we've ever had in terms of A, defining, B, measuring, and C, demonstrating sustainability, and that's the Gulf Environment Organization. But we're not using that resource as well as we should be. And how does that, how does that manifest itself? It manifests itself in every project we go to, particularly new ones, where you have to deal with the same old, largely ill-informed, tired arguments that golf is bad for the environment. Well, for sure, stuff that we did 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago is not as good for the environment as best practice now. You no longer sit down with a site plan and start routing out the best course that you can put on that plan. You figure out, you appraise the site and figure out where the sensitive areas are, and then what do we do to avoid those? Because if you don't avoid them, you'll end up in a planning process that will last years and years, and it's just not productive.
How does the industry tell the story better? Because I think inside the industry, I think most people now understand how the positive effects golf can have on those 4 pillars that you mentioned, but outside it's just not breaking through. And what can golf do better? And probably whose job is it to do that?
I don't think it's any one person's role. Clearly, Gulf Environment Organization can take a lead in that role, but I don't think it's their position and theirs alone to tell the story. We all have a responsibility to tell the story of an industry that gives us our livelihood. We're very, very lucky to do what we do.
Yeah.
So I think we all, as I say, we all have a responsibility to spread the news. What we need is data. In the end, it's all very well me saying it's great.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to believe me until I can produce the data. And I think, one of the great things, as I say, about the GEO program is it gives you the data. You've got real hard evidence to go to refute some of the, as I say, ill-founded comments that you get so often.
Do you think it's a PR campaign as well, that golf, yeah. If the bodies were to come together hypothetically and enlist a top PR agency from a wider world, even from the golfing world, to really get that message out there and communicate it and break through the barriers, there needs to be a different approach, because spreading it amongst the whole industry becomes nobody's job, and then it just doesn't get done. And is that potentially something that over the next 10 years we just never break through that barrier?
Well, I think, for sure, it would help if there was somebody doing golf's PR. But again, I think it's almost too big an issue, and the industry is too widespread for one entity to be charged with or be able to deliver, improving golf's PR. I think it's little steps every day. We're never going to change the industry as a whole. That's just not going to happen. You're going to change the industry one project and one person at a time. What I see is, if you start with one project and then 2 and then 4 and 6, it's the rate of change picks up. But to say, industry, we have to change, or we've got to we've all got to do a better job. Okay, yeah, we've all got to do a better job, but we will all do a better job individually, and that will drive exponential change. But it ain't going to start with everybody doing it at the same time.
So I also wanted to pick up on design, architecture, construction, and also its link with mass participation. Again, from the outside, I think where we've seen golf try to grow in these developing golf destinations, economies, the focus has been around tournament golf. Build a tournament golf course, showcase that through an event, and hopefully that then brings in the buy-in for the population to start playing golf. What's really the legacy of some of these courses? Because I think from the outside, maybe some of them haven't sort of kicked on, which isn't to do maybe the design and the tour side of it, but just the whole strategic thinking of how golf will evolve in that location. So is there really a legacy of some of these tournament courses? Have they hit their objectives, do you think, 5-10 years down the line?
One course on its own is never going to establish golf as a game anywhere. You need a number of facilities, and you need a number of facilities at various degrees of, for the want of a better word, sophistication. Yes, you can have your tournament course, but there's no sport anywhere in the world that has grown from the top of the pyramid down, from the elite level down. You look at any sport that's been successful, it starts at grassroots level, and the pyramid is like this. Yeah. Whereas what they're trying to do is invert the pyramid. They're trying to grow it from the elite level up. It will not work. So if the intention is to grow the game of golf, one facility will never ever do that. As I say, you've got to have a range of facilities and at different levels, and then you need to get people to actually come and try it. So getting people to come and try on a tournament facility never going to work. The question is, the challenge for golf is, who is going to fund the starter facilities?
And do you see the day when these investors, these high net worths, will look at more on the mass participation or just different business models away from that sort of elitist high-end membership for the few? Or are we still a few years away from maybe the light bulb moment?
Again, I think it depends where you are. I think, in emerging markets, I think we're quite a long way from that, and that will inevitably slow the development of the game in those markets. If you look at the Russian market, if you're not an oligarch, basically you can't afford to play because everything has been geared around that marketplace, particularly around Moscow and St. Petersburg. But in other territories, look at what Topgolf's done. If you want mass participation, Topgolf is an extraordinary concept. My wife is the most unsporting girl from the most unsporting family, and she went to Topgolf, works do a couple of years ago, and came back and she was absolutely buzzing because I got it in the target and I got points. And, it gives instant feedback, and in the end, that's kind of what drives people.
And is there much on the innovation side of golf courses and that gamification, where you can take the Topgolf style element and take it to a golf course where there is that instant gratification? Is there any discussions, or is there any?
We haven't had any discussions about putting sensors in the bottom of a hole or around a green to you get 3 extra points if you get it within 5. I think there's a limit to. I think there's a limit to how you can adapt an existing course, but I don't think there's any limits to what you can do on different types of facilities. What did Topgolf do? They took a driving range and they made it sexy. That's pretty amazing, because you wouldn't say practice ranges were all that sexy 15 years ago. I do think there is a move away from the traditional golf model, and there are there are an increasing number of golf clubs that are adapting and becoming much more family orientated, much less traditional golf club. I think the model is going to change. I think you've got to, we've been talking about it for years as an industry. We've got to bring more women into the game. We've got to bring more kids into the game, because there are only so many middle-aged white dudes that with dodgy trousers that you can bring into, you know, I mean, that most of us are already, most of us are already in that, you know, we're already there. Yeah. So there's only so many more that you can bring in, but you know, bring in kids. Why would you not bring kids in? You know, the conversations we regularly have with golf clubs, which is, I mean, not in the last 7 months because everybody's busy, but you know, 2 years ago, you have tea times available. Why would you not offer them to the local school?
Yeah.
What have you got to lose? You know, offer them to the school. There's a facility in Germany. They give 500 lessons a week to kids free. And I was saying to the GM, I said, how the hell do how do you finance that? And he said, it finances itself. He said, it's the best members drive we've ever had. These are kids, they can't drive themselves. So mum or dad has to drive them to the golf club. While they're having a lesson, they come in the bar, they have a drink, they might have a meal. And he said, we've sold more memberships off the back of it, you know, these kids than any other program that we've ever had. He said, it's fantastic.
And in your sector with all your peers, how much influence do you guys really have when you speak to a developer or a club about a new development? Do you use influence to try and get them thinking down the right tracks? Is it easy to do? What's that conversation like? Because it's not a dark part of the industry, but it's an industry that people don't really know about, and these projects come out of nowhere. And
again, it depends who we're dealing with and what their motivation is. You know, for the I mean, it's wrong to call them vanity projects, but they kind of, you know, it's sort of, it works. You know, those people have very definite ideas about what they want, and our job is to help steer them away from something that is clearly never going to work. Most of the people that we're working with take a much more pragmatic approach. I hate it when a client says to us, how much money do I need to spend on the golf course? Because what I want him to say is, my business plan allows me to spend this. How do I best spend it to get what I want? Because that then tells me that he's done his research, he understands his target market, he understands what they will pay, and he understands how much he can spend. But the guy that says, how much is it going to cost, you know, all of a sudden is like, well, you know, if you really thought this through, and maybe you're talking to us too early. You need to get your business plan in place first. Now, for those guys, you then say, well, let's not approach it that way. Let's approach it from a sort of economic feasibility standpoint. Let's figure out, you know, where you know, how much money do you have to invest, and how much is all of the other development going to cost, and then we'll figure out what we can spend on the golf course. Because, you know, I mean, yes, we design golf courses, but actually we are quite often enabling other developments or other elements of development that ultimately are going to return far more financially than the golf course can. You know, I mean, worst case, the golf course needs to wash its face each year. Ideally, it's making a profit, but it's not going to make a profit like the housing or the hotel or, you know, whatever else it might be. So you know, there is this balance between achieving the maximum and value for money. I was really lucky early in my career. I had a client who told me his 90-50 rule, and I looked at him a bit blankly, and he said, look, he said, 90% of perfection will cost me 50%. It's the extra 10% that doubles the cost. He said, and the only people that will recognize the difference in the terms of quality of golf between 90 and 100 are you and your golf geek mates. He said, he said, other clients might be interested in 100%, but I'm not. I want 90%. So you deliver me 90% and I'll be a happy man. And that was for a young, naive, idealistic guy, that was initially it was quite a hard lesson to learn. But actually, over the years, I've come to appreciate that more and more. You know, it's like, don't chase perfection. Get it to the right level of quality, unless the guy that you're working for wants perfection. And then he won't, you know, he's not worried about that extra 50%. Yeah. But there aren't many of them around.
And do you think that golf is commercially viable, commercially exciting, sort of moving forwards? There are going to be more opportunities, because the running joke, I think, in industry for a lot of people is, would you buy your own golf course? If you won the lottery tomorrow, would you buy your own golf course and operate it? And whether they mean it or not, people laugh it off and say absolutely not. But there must be some really good opportunities and viable opportunities, but also maybe it's a culture within the industry where we need to shift slightly to go, let's make it commercially viable rather than laugh it off as a bit of a joke.
There are very intelligent people putting money into golf, and I don't think they would be doing that if it was a financial black hole. It can be, but again, the projects that tend to fail are poorly located, poorly conceived, poorly funded, or they're just the wrong product in the wrong place at the wrong time, and there never was a market to begin with. You know, one of the sort of fairly regular questions that we ask when we're looking at a new site is where you know, how far is it to the nearest McDonald's? And right. People look at you, well, are you hungry? You know, we just had a fantastic meal in the, you know. You go, no, it's got nothing to do with, no. But McDonald's has got amazing demographic research. So that, you know, the logic is, from our point of view, is generally, if there's a McDonald's within 30 minutes of a site, you've got enough chimney pots to potentially justify developing something, depending on other factors. I mean, you know, if you've got 50 other golf courses within 30 minutes of that same McDonald's, then maybe not so much. But at least you know that, you know, that simple question gives you an answer to, okay, well, there's people. There might be a demand. You know, rather than starting the process by, okay, well, we're going to go to a site and we're going to start drawing, and, you know, in 2 days we're going to come up with the initial master plan. No, just start listening to people. Listen to the client, listen to the architect, listen to the engineer. Go into the town and listen to people talking in the bar and find out, you know, what is it that's going to work.
Last question, and I think this will be a question probably on a lot of people watching this, and they'll hate if I don't ask it, is, with all the wisdom that you've got over the years, I've now got £10 million. Where do you invest in golf? Where do you see the opportunity? What sort of development would you create?
I would do something that appeals to as many people as possible. I think the market for the uber exclusive is saturated in this part of the country. I think the market, you know, if you want, go out and hack a ball around, I think there's plenty of that. I think there's quite a lot of middle ground, but what's not differentiating the middle ground is quality. You know, it doesn't have to, you don't have to spend tons of money to deliver something that's a little bit special, and service is as big a part of that as anything. Signage around the place. You know, how often do you go to a new a new club or course? Where do I go? How do I, you know, like I'm in the car park, I don't even know where the front door is half the time. And then you get to the front door and you've got to have a code.
Yeah.
Yeah, come on. You've got to make these places, they've got to be inviting. As I say, if I had 10 million, or if you had 10 million and you were generous enough to plop it on the table, my advice would be develop something that is at the high end of the middle market, because I think that would set you apart so well.
Really appreciate all of your insights and honest and frank answers. As a thank you, you're going to be one of the first, if not the first, to receive the Gather socks. We'll allude a bit more to what the Gather socks mean, but as you see, they're not your average golf sock.
No, they're not.
But really appreciate your time, and hopefully moving forwards we'll get you involved in a few more discussions and events where members will be able to pick your brains on wider subjects.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.